Salesforce reported its Q4 fiscal 26 earnings just the other night. And obviously, there's a lot that gets reported in a Q4, right? You get the Q4 numbers, you get the full year numbers. They have various clouds or Agentforce sales, Agentforce service. You get the gist. A lot of things reported on Agentforce and what's going on. The RPOs, the CRPO numbers, the guidance. I'm going to cover some of that. I've put some content out on LinkedIn summarizing some of those key metrics as well. Certainly think it's important to understand them, especially as you prepare for your negotiations, right? Every detail matters. But I really want to spend a few minutes talking about what was said during the earnings call. Nothing really surprising, but if anything, it just further supports what you as customers have to get ahead of. So total revenue for the year was $41.5 billion, representing about 10% growth. They said it themselves. It was driven by Agentforce and Data Cloud or Data 360, Slack, and then sales and service come in the core pieces. They also mentioned that, look, this was making up for some lack or an offset of what's going on with Marketing Cloud and Commerce and Tableau, where they're struggling a little bit, right? So many of you customers out there, and we work with them, maybe you're thinking about moving off, and some have, obviously. There's leverage in that to stick around. Let's look at the subscription revenue, right? So that's total revenue. The subscription and support revenue was $39.38 billion, 10% growth. They had 10% growth on that line item last Q4, right? Q4 FY25. So kind of staying flat. Obviously, the market doesn't like that. That's something they're going to be paying attention to. They need to start accelerating that. Guidance. They're expecting their subscription support revenue for FY27 to come in slightly under 12%. So a little bit better. But again, the market didn't react very favorably to that. Now, they're a SaaS vendor as it is, so the market's not really doing too many favors for SaaS-based companies as well, even though, again, I don't believe SaaS is dead. And as Benny have talked about, the SaaS apocalypse and things of that nature, I'm not going to get into that. Just there's plenty of enterprise customers we work with that aren't moving off of their SaaS solutions anytime soon. Let's look at some of the key metrics tied to Agentforce, right? So Agentforce ARR, $800 million, up 169%. Now again, that 169% number, you got to kind of look at that as it is. It's only been around for so long. But $800 million, so it's slightly under $1 billion. They clearly need to get to $1 billion. They want to report that as part of the next earnings call. So anyone who's in negotiations right now, you already have leverage, but that's important to pay attention to. They now have 29,000 Agentforce deals since the launch, up 50%. So again, that's impressive, right? They're growing the number of customers using, or at least adopting, or at least adding to their order forms, which by the way, could probably be part of Salesforce Foundations, which is free. But the point is 29,000 Agentforce deals since the inception. Now, I didn't see anywhere in there about reporting how many of those are paid. Now, in the past, they've been telling you the breakout of paid. They didn't do it this time. So that's something to pay attention to. That's noteworthy. Well, why didn't they? Now, again, in fairness to them, they did give the $800 million number. This next one's big. More than 60% of Agentforce and Data 360 Q4 bookings were from existing customer expansion. And that's the key. And that's what I want to spend a few minutes on. They've always made this clear. This is the consumption-based licensing component to Agentforce, the consumption-based that's tied to Data 360. It is the flex credit model. It is the start to use, consume. The flywheel gets in motion, and then more revenue comes their way, more bookings comes their way, as they just called out. Okay, so chief operating officer and financial officer Washington talked about the flywheel. Our consumption flywheel is spinning faster than ever. Milano, chief revenue officer, which I'm going to get to in a minute, talked about the flywheel. So here's the deal. If you don't understand what an action is, if you don't understand how the flex credits work, if you don't have future price protections, if you don't have transparency, if you don't have this licensing model, this thing that the investment community and Salesforce is going to be heavily relying on to drive revenue is going to benefit them and hurt you. So you have to pause. You have to look before you leap. Okay? And here's something that I'm going to spend an extra second. I'm going to read it, so bear with me. Milano, Chief Revenue Officer. He talked about the monetization of AI. And he's pretty clear. There are three ways, distinct ways, and these are the main ones, that we are using to monetize AI. Number one, our large install base of 100 million seats, we're upgrading to our premium SKUs. That is the Agentforce One sales, Agentforce One service. They're moving you up to these very expensive per user per month, and then within it, there's a set number of a flex credit component that you get for Agentforce. Well, if you go over that, what happens? So in other words, they're monetizing it by putting them in the per user base, but within it, there's also a hybrid component. The second way to monetize, and this is a peculiar one, he says, is now our apps are Agentforce sales, Agentforce service. And so now the ROI that these companies are generating goes up. So now we have access to new seats that before they couldn't afford. So in other words, he's pitching the way they're at monetizing AI is simply by the fact that the products are becoming more valuable, so more customers can see the ROI, so more seats. Now, I don't know about that one, but here's the third. The third way is for customer-facing agentic use cases, agents which sell fuel, the credits, flex credits. And companies, if you look at the bookings of Agentforce in Q4, 50% were credits, flex credits, fuel, and 50% were higher SKUs. So in other words, that 800 million, it's coming from flex credits, and it's coming from moving people from the premium SKUs. He also spent time talking about the AELA, which again, I'm not going to spend time on here. I've done this before. That model, that agreement structure is highly problematic. You think you can use as much as you want, and then the Reaper comes at the end. But this is the deal. They've made it clear. They need you to adopt. They need you to start using Agentforce Data 360. It's not just they need it. The financial community is demanding it. So if you're in a position where you may offer them that, make sure you have the right deal, transparency, everything. And if you don't, they are going to win. It's that simple. They are going to win. They need the flywheel to spin. Before you give them that, make sure everything is set up for success for you, because there are concerns, there are cost exposures that, if not mitigated, are going to be significant.